course, we've been studying about Abraham, or actually Abram at this point. He's still being called Abraham. Sarah is still being called Sarai. That's the way I pronounce it. That maybe to be wrong. And of course, Abram is in the land of Canaan now, and he is still kind of a nomad. He owns no land, but he has got lots of stuff, lots of animals, lots of possessions, lots of servants. The last time we talked about Abram and Lot, his nephew, was there. The land would not support all the animals they had, and so Abram give Lot the choice that you go one way and I'll go the other, because the land won't support us. And we find Lot pitched his tent toward Sodom. And chapter 14 is my title on my chapter says the War of the Kings. And of course, the king of, evidently every little town had its own king. And Sodom is one of them that is involved, the town of Sodom. Where do we find Lot at this time? He's in Sodom, isn't he? You ever take a look, once he started out, he get the best land was that way, so he went the flat land. And he got close to the sinful place, and now he's in the sinful place. It doesn't say that he was committing all these sins, but he let it draw him in. And when we find out when God destroys Sodom, that they can't find 10 righteous people in the whole town. And out of all possessions that Lot had, and all the stuff that he had, he escapes with himself and 2 daughters. Because his wife looks back and is turned into a pillar of salt. But here we have Lot he's in the town of Sodom, or city. And and that's one thing, many times we look at things, we know things are bad. We know things are sinful. Many times we want to get just as close as we can without actually getting into it. I remember Brother Tim had a lesson one time where he had a picture of a flat top mountain with a cliff on each side, and we are like that. We like to get just as close to the edge as we can without falling off in it. We want to get just as close to sin sometimes we can. We're not planning on getting into it, but if we make one misstep, we fall off the cliff. So here we find Lot. He gets close to Sodom, and now he's in Sodom. And it wouldn't be too many chapters from now, we'll find out that he loses everything with the exception of 2 daughters. Because God utterly destroys everything else in that area, and everyone else.
Humans nosy nature. They got to get close enough to see what's going on.
They got to see what's going on. If sin was automatically ugly, if sin was automatically painful, there wouldn't be so much of a lure with it. The first sin where Eve ate the fruit, almost an apple. When she ate the fruit, whatever it was. What was it? It wasn't an ugly fruit. It wasn't all dried up and withered, was it? It didn't smell like it was rotten. It was something pretty to look at. And it was going to make her smart and make her like God. That was the temptation. It's not only pretty and it's going to be tasteful, it's also going to give her benefits that she would be smart, she would know right from wrong, and she'd be like God. But it's something that she was not supposed to do. Here we know that Lot knew, he knew the sins that were in Sodom, but yet he went there anyway. He went there anyway. But here we have these kings, and some kings had more control over than others, and so they were all paying tribute to one, and they decided to rebel. They didn't want to pay tribute anymore, and so they had a battle and a war, and Sodom has been overcome. And they take all the people and all the animals and all the stuff, and they take it all hostage, and Lot and his family are included. And then Abraham, or I keep saying, let's just go ahead and call him Abraham. He's Abram at this point, but Abraham with his chosen servants, men servants, and there's around 300 of them, they go out and they defeat the armies, and they get Lot back, and they get his kids back, and they get his wife back, and they get everybody back. They don't lose anything. And so they're on their way back, and they run into a very interesting figure in the Scriptures. They run across a king who is also God's priest. And what is his name? Melchizedek. Turn over to Hebrews chapter 7. It'll take me a second to get there. Verse 1. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, who met Abraham as he was returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him, to whom also Abraham apportioned a tenth part of all the spoils, was first of all, by the translation of his name, still talking about Melchizedek, king of righteousness, then also king of Salem, which is king of peace. Without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like the Son of God, he remains a priest perpetually. Now observe how great this man was, to whom Abraham the patriarch gave a tenth of the choicest spoils. And those indeed of the sons of Levi who received the priest office have commandment in the law to collect a tenth from the people, that is, from their brethren, although these are descended from Abraham. But the one whose genealogy is not traced from them collected a tenth from Abraham and blessed him, and blessed the one who had the promises. But without any dispute, the lesser is blessed by the greater. In this case, mortal men receive tithes, but in that case, one receives them of whom it is witnessed that he lives on. And so to speak, through Abraham, even Levi, who received tithes, paid tithes, for he was still in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him. Okay, this Melchizedek is a very interesting figure or person in the Scriptures, and this, what we just read, is about all you can know about him. What does it mean? And I was confused when I was a kid, because the preacher would talk about Melchizedek, and he said, without father, without mother. Well, what does that mean? Did he not have a father and mother?
We're taught that it means they weren't recorded.
Yes. Melchizedek was God's high priest because of the kind of person he was, not because it was the kind of person he was born to. Does that make sense?
Not because of any certain tribe or.
Not because he was a certain tribe, or the tribe of Levi and the descendant of Aaron. That would, that you automatically could become qualified to become a priest under the Levitical priesthood just because of who you were born to, not necessarily what kind of person you are or were, because we find that there were priests who were very wicked, but yet they were qualified to be priests because they were born into the right tribe and in the right people. Melchizedek was king because of the kind of person he was. He was God's high priest. He was the king of Salem, which most places you read want to interpret that as being what became Jerusalem. That Salem would be a shorter word for what became Jerusalem. Now, Leland, if you disagree with me on anything, you're more of a history buff than I am on some of this stuff. So. Jerusalem, okay. Now, who is considered a priest after his order? Jesus Christ. Scripture says he is a priest after the order of Melchizedek. Jesus is not a priest because he is of the tribe of Levi, but he is a priest because of the kind of individual or person or being, whatever you want to describe him as he was. Just like Melchizedek. The Jews revered Abraham, and they delighted in the fact that they could trace themselves back to Abraham, and they considered themselves to be automatically safe with God because if they could trace themselves back to Abraham. But here the writer of Hebrews states that there's one greater than him because Abraham paid tithes to him, paid a tenth of the spoils to him. Okay? Abraham gets all the stuff back.
Virgil, there in chapter 14,
Yes.
look at verse 14.
Okay?
Brother?
Mine says when Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive. What does yours say?
Mine says brother.
Yours says brother. He led out his trained men born in his house, 318, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. What's the question?
This statement is 318 men.
Yes.
Says they were trained.
Yes.
Abraham has grown to the point where he's kind of got his own little army.
Probably had to have.
You know, these aren't shepherds and field workers and whatnot that he just pressed into service. You know, these guys are his security detail.
Yeah, you see, Abraham had lots of stuff. And he was kind of a trespasser because, it'll say that Abram the Hebrew, and then it'll name the other guys, they were different because everybody was it was all tribal. And so Abraham had, it says 318 trained men. These were, like you said, these were security guards. You probably had his regular sheep herders and his regular servants to do different things, but he had to have somebody to protect everybody else because let's face it, this is not a country where there is law and order. There's no government, each town has their own little king. If you're out in the country, well, there's the king in that little town. He's not worried about you unless he wants to take your stuff. And so he would have to have security. And this is what does it mean? And we know that Abraham hasn't had any kids yet, but it says that they were born in his house. Where'd they come from?
Servants.
Huh?
Servants.
Servants, okay. You reckon how many, he's not going to tell us, but just a man. How many servants did Abraham have to have? He's got 318 trained soldiers that were born there. And these would be grown, we consider to be grown men, old enough to fight, be trained. And each one of them would have to have a father and mother.
They were probably regular servants. They were trained in sword and
Okay,
other things. They probably
Okay.
did both roles.
that's possible.
Yeah,
Still.
because in those days, anyone that was a servant was considered part of the household.
Yes. That's what, God tells Abraham that, he's going to give him all this land and all this stuff. And Abraham says, well, my heir has got to be somebody in my household. And his name escapes me right now, but he names, I believe it's Eleazar, but anyway, names it. He's the servant that's born in my house. He's the oldest one. He's the closest to me. I guess he'll get all the stuff. He'll get all the stuff, But God said, no, that's not. You're going to have a son. You're going to have a son. You're not going to give it to your servant. You're going to give it to the son. Your stuff. In fact, in the king of Sodom wants to give certain things to Abraham. What does Abraham tell him? Well, look that far ahead. I don't want anything. Now, these young men don't want to fight and give them their share. But I don't want anything that you think is yours. Why? Because
It's sworn to God.
he's sworn to God. What else? What does he say? The king of Sodom will say, I have made Abraham rich. Abraham was already rich, according to what we find. He was already rich. He didn't own any land, but he had lots of animals and lots of people who were all under his control. Just be like a small army and people and animals just wandering around looking for grass to eat for the cows and the sheep and the goats. Just don't forget the goats. Did I hear a question or? Chapter 15 talks about Abraham and the Word of God coming to him in a vision. And God says, your reward shall be very great. Verse 1. Verse 2, Abram said, O Lord God, what will you give me since I am childless? And the heir of my house is Eleazar, and that's my pronouncing, maybe Eliezer, of Damascus. And Abram said, since you have given no offspring to me, one born in my house is my heir. Then behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, this man will not be your heir, but with one who will come forth from your own body, he shall be your heir. And he took him outside and said, now look toward the heavens and count the stars, if you are able to count them. He said to him, so shall your descendants be. Then he believed in the Lord, and he reckoned it to him as righteousness. That's a lot of descendants in it. See if you can count the stars. Anybody ever tried to count the stars? Just can't do it, can you? Just can't do it. You know, even today with the development of more high-tech, if you will, telescopes or things to look at with, they'll find a star that they had nobody ever actually noticed before. Been there all along, I'm sure, but
Galaxies.
yeah, galaxies that they never knew was there. And so he said, see if you can count the stars, which you couldn't. That's the way your descendants are going to be there, and they're going to come from you. That's a bunch of people. And you think, well, you know, and does it come true? Yes, as the scriptures unfold, we'll find it. They just keep adding and adding and adding. How many people goes down into the land of Egypt? They're all descendants of Abraham. How many people goes down to the land of Egypt? It gives us a number. About 75. Is that more? That what? How many comes out?
600,000 men.
Yeah, 600,000 men.
Not counting the wives.
And that's not counting all the wives and all the little kids. So you probably safely say over 1 million people comes out. Why, that's not 400 years. Lots of things can happen. Years. Go back to the farthest ancestor you can think of yours. And start, if you can, start at, just you don't have to worry about, add, well, they had this many kids, and each one of them had this many kids, and them kids had this many kids. In 100 or so years, there's a lot of people involved, aren't they? People who live to be old enough to have been married 60 and 70 years, and if they had very many kids to start out with, and they had kids, it's a whole bunch just in their lifetime, descendants. Just in their lifetime. So you can safely say that from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, his grandson, his sons and their descendants in 400 years went from 75 to over 1 million people. And that's pretty hard to count right there. And then they just kept adding on. And now through Christ, in the spiritual descendants, because that includes all of us, over the last 2,000 years since Christ, or close, we're getting close to that. It truly is like the stars and the sands of the sea. You can't count, can you? You just can't count them all.
We also have fulfillment of part of the promise that God made to Abraham back in chapter 12, right here in chapter 15.
Okay?
It says, this land that you are now possessing.
Yeah.
That was part of his promise.
Yeah.
That he'd take him to a land that would show him.
Yeah, he showed him the land, didn't he? Yeah. He showed him all the land. Well, that clock up there in the wall has got to have something done to it. I don't even know I can't even tell what time it's supposed to be
No,
on.
it's way off.
But anyway, I can't reach that higher. I'd dial it around, buddy. You think its battery's dead? There's something. It's went completely haywire. It's for sure. One thing about it, it'll be right twice in every 24 hours. It'll be right. But anyway, that's close as you can get. So, okay, next week, which will be the 24th.